2005. Okay, so the first one, how about that? We actually got the report. You click on that and there's your article. But when if you're not used to doing searching, sometimes you're going to get stuck. So just know that we are here to help you. Say, I got this and I'm trying to get it and find it and I can't do that. Also on our home page of the library, on the top right-hand corner, I'll show you again, we have Library Learn, which is a bunch of videos that help you learn how to do those little things. So there's one on Find It. If you don't remember what I told you today on how to go back and look for that particular journal. So this is how we got to that specific article. Other things to know, for ways to narrow down your search, you can decide that you want to narrow it, I want this to be really about this particular, I really want to focus on this. So then limit your terms to be looking in the abstract. Okay, that's one way of really narrowing it down, and know that it's focused and it's not like it appeared somewhere in the text down on page 52, and it's not really about that. This happens to have those terms. And then you limit it down, you got 7 and 8. Okay? Any questions? Yes?
Again, all of these data sources as go ProQuest and LexisNexis, you got it from the library main page, or
okay,
where that comes from again?
I'll open up the library page again so I can show you a couple of things. So we're at nova.edu/library/main. That is in this thing that you should have gotten last week, and for those of you who weren't, I have more. Okay.
Just bookmark the page.
Bookmark this page, because you can go back to it over and over again, okay? So articles. Okay, let's go over these tabs. NovaCat is our catalog, okay? The old-fashioned, for some of you probably don't even know what a card catalog is, because I've gone to lectures where someone asked me at the end, what is a card catalog? So this basically is the universe of what Nova has, okay? Our books, our ebooks, our journal titles, our multimedia, as I remember, for those of you who need to take a break from studying, we do Blu-rays, and we've got video games and all kinds of fun things over there on the first floor, because we are a joint use facility with Broward County. So we have public usage as well. So we have it on the first floor, you can access those. Articles is where you're going to go to the databases. Okay? You're going to look at databases by subject, or all databases, which gives you a listing. Journal finders, when you're doing research and you get a bunch of references, or your professor may say, I want you to read these specific articles, and they're going to give you a citation. You need to look up that citation, right? So then you're going to put in the title of the journal in here, and you can find a particular issue. So let's just put in Business Week. So it's going to give you all the titles that have that in there. So here's Bloomberg Business Week, and here's where Business Source Premier has that one. You would click on whatever journal is that you're looking for, and then you can find the particular issue that you're looking for, and then get the article that way. That's what the browse thing does a lot of the times. And so it goes back. This actually goes back longer than you said 2010, but just we have more than that. Old business. Okay. This tutorials is where you find help for LibGuides that we put together. So if you need any information on APA, some of you will be requesting that. There's a LibGuide for it. There's all the information on how to cite the text, how do I cite, blah, 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 that we put together. We also have a new website just for APA that our librarians put together. So you can put in how do I cite, and you put like book, and then it'll give you all different kinds of options for that. So be aware that those tutorials are there. And just so you know, we just renamed from last week the business one. So it was nova.campusguides.com / it was HSBE. Yes.
Can you go back to the APA
show you the business one while I'm here. It's now /business. So it's, because since the school went to college, and then we, you know, in case it changes name again, it'll just be business, and you can get everything on business located here. Okay, and this is the page that we will be developing more for real estate information, where we're going to point you in some directions of things for you to look at. But we do have periodicals and some websites outside for you to look at. So let me go back to the APA one. Okay. So writing and citation style guides, we have for all of the ones. APA, yes. What was your question?
Is that like a textbook? Like, what is it? Is there a page other than that?
A LibGuide is, it's actually a platform, and they all kind of look the same. We do them for we do them for subjects, we do them for writing, we do them for different things. And it's taking information, the librarians actually create these, and we put in information that will help you further. This is not the book of APA. This is tips to help you do it. So the business guide is tips for you to find information. So you can look under your major, you can look under how to find company information, and there's a page for how to, there's sites to go to and other information to help you. Yes?
Are you going to review EndNote or RefWorks?
The NOVA gives all students EndNote for free, so that's what we support. We do.
So we're not going to do that now.
No.
And perhaps depending on what our need is, we can do that in either second or third class, because you will want to make sure you get this right with your final project. But that's a deep dive on its own.
Okay, yeah, I can show you here from our main webpage on workshops and instruction. This is where upcoming things are coming. So today they're doing an APA workshop in Jacksonville that you can go to. This is what's coming up, so you can keep following what's going on here and seeing what's upcoming for different workshops. We usually try to cover EndNote in one of them. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom, there is a presentation there. There's a PDF on EndNote. There's a LibGuide for EndNote, and there's some, there may be some other things as well. You can always schedule a one-on-one, one of those appointments with someone and say that you need help with EndNote. Someone who's good at that will help you.
Any other questions?
Good question. In regards to the pages that you mentioned here, we cannot find it on the main page, all the ProQuest, all the search.
Because my question was, can we access EBSCO, ProQuest, or LexisNexis through the main page?
Or just ProQuest?
I'm not sure what you mean. Like to go here, you have to get to the databases, all of them.
Oh, okay.
ProQuest,
Oh, okay.
whatever. If you go to all databases, what you get is an alphabetical listing. So if you want to go to ProQuest,
Yeah.
but the thing is, when people say ProQuest, we have like 28 databases from ProQuest. One of them is ABI Inform, one of them may be Medline, so they're all across different disciplines. So it's not just ProQuest, it's ABI Inform is a specific one. There are others within, and same with EBSCO, they also have maybe 25 or 30 databases that we subscribe to.
The databases you went on today, was that just random, or are those some of your favorite databases to go on for?
They're the top picks. It depends on, as you get more familiar with the different ones, you'll find different things. You may develop a favorite one, because we had a lot today that came up in ABI Inform. But EBSCO has some other things that the other ones don't, like Harvard Business Review comes up in EBSCO, and you're not going to get that in ProQuest. So you kind of have to play around and learn when you're doing what your different sources are.
Depending on what your project focus is and what your product type is, and then you'll develop that facility saying, this is where I can find the information. Right now, it's like.
Can I show a couple of statistical?
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to show you here, under the databases, when we go to databases by subject, on the statistical sources, so today you're getting a lot of information on statistics that, you're getting the real specific geographic ones, but some of the things I want to point out are for international, the OECD has a whole bunch of data topics. You can go into, you can do it by country. They have statistical news releases, but they do provide the raw data. So when you're looking at development or the economy, so household accounts, leading indicators, those types of information, and they do have it for the U.S. as well. If you know, if there's something with the environment that affects what you're doing, so there's a lot of different data sets here that you can play around with. They will give you the raw data. You can incorporate, export that information, and then use it. So this is again talking bigger picture, not about one particular building or whatever, but kind of getting an overview of the area. Let me go back. Also, the same thing in EIU. So this is from The Economist. There's some intelligence reports there too, market research, industry research. The Florida Statistical Abstract Online. So this is a public site. This isn't something that we subscribe to. It will show up, because I've tried this before. I was like, it can't be found. So this breaks down Florida data for households, education. This is interesting. It happened before, but then it just showed up. Kind of took a while to load. If I get this again, I'll look to make sure that the link is okay, but just so you know that that resource is available, so it breaks down. Okay, there it goes. Let's just click on data. So here, employment and earnings, population and geography, finance and insurance, income and poverty, housing and real estate. So here's home values, home ownership, home sales, rent statistics. They break that down. Monthly housing, there's a lot of data here. Number of, home, there's, you can see it goes on and on and on. And then also, you have the statistical abstract of the U.S., which has broader information, UN data, World Data Bank, so this is information more global, things that can help you on a bigger picture.
Lots of information.
Yeah, lots. Any questions?
Any more questions? All right, great, thank you, Susie. You have her card, you have her number, you have her email.
I'll leave you a couple things in the back. And just since data visualization came up a couple of times today, I will tell you that there's a workshop coming up in March where we're having one of our professors from actually the computer area, computer engineering, will be doing a presentation on data visualization using some other sources. So I'll make sure you get a reminder about that. It's in March. Sign up to attend this.
Excuse me, so 7 months from now, we're all going to be experts in pros on data visualization. Actually, there's a wonderful book that was put out by Edward Huff. Actually, it's all about visualization of data. I'll happily bring you to that particular one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my computer. Hopefully I can get that online pretty quickly right here. And we're going to continue with a number of other different topics. This will work well.
Susan? Hi, how are you?
Okay, so thanks to Susan and Michelle and the others. So what I want to do for the next 45 minutes to an hour before we have lunch is really delve into the development process. And what I'd like to do is start off with a video. I'd like you to, and in fact, for this part of our presentation, close your notebooks. Because I want to see everybody's notebook closed, please. Thank you. There isn't anything you have to refer to there. We're all going to use our brains here and hopefully just to focus on what we're looking at. But for the next minute, I want you to watch this video. Watch it carefully. Think about what it is that we see. Hopefully it's going to work. Let's see if I can get the volume up here. So, you just watched a minute of triple plays. Probably going to think, what and why could I have you looking at that? So let's just do something right now. Let's switch this, get this here, we're going to make this big. I want you all to tell me, and I'm going to write down some of the comments here, of what it is that you just saw.
Teamwork.
All right, Stephen, start.
She just said it. Teamwork, coordination.
Okay. Were they coordinated? I guess they were. So it seems. Okay, Frederick, what did you guys say? Okay, all right, something else. Claudius.
Different ways to get the same results.
Okay, that's an interesting response. Yes, subject.
Strategy?
I'm sorry?
Strategy?
Okay. Was there strategy there? I don't know. Let's think about that. Yes.
It's same as though it was a system.
You know what type of system it
Well,
was?
I don't know, it depended on the results, they didn't guess about what it told the ball, they got it through it, they knew exactly where to go.
All right, what about you?
Procedure?
Or procedure.
I always like showing these things because everybody has their own way of figuring out what that means. Okay, yes, Jeff.
Desire to win.
Boy, you're inferring a lot there. Tula. Repetition. That's interesting. Good. Okay, Nick.
I saw people that put the work in and were prepared, were presented with an opportunity and executed.
Some of you have incredible mind reading skills. Brandon.
Organized.
Organized. Okay. All right, Carol.
Synergy.
Synergy. Oh, I like that word. Well, I like lots of words. That one. Is there any others? Uniformity. Oh, that's interesting.
Leadership.
Oh,
Strong individual effort, which makes up teamwork.
okay, if we go back, maybe to teamwork. Okay, and yes,
Awareness.
awareness. I like that. And it's not that I don't like some of these others. Wait, anybody else not say anything before I go back? Just a minute. Who hasn't said anything?
Let's just say like they trusted what they saw and second guess.
That's interesting. So I'm just going to use the word trust. Okay, yes.
When one drops the ball, everybody loses.
Wait, time out. Is that because you think you know baseball, or is that what happens?
I related to real life.
Okay, all right, good. So she's involved in real life, and so say, don't drop the ball. Yes, Carol.
Focus.
Focus, yes. Okay. All right, one more for fun of it, yes.
Timing.
Sorry?
Timing.
Timing, yeah, that's good. Okay, so we have a really interesting list up here now, right? All sorts of items, and of course, nobody told me about how well they played. That's fine. Maybe they did play well, because in fact, all those triple plays succeeded. But did they succeed because of all these different items here? That's the question. And it's interesting, no matter what we look at, whether we're talking about real estate or another endeavor, there are all sorts of reasons that help make something a success, right? And I just simply wanted to show this because this is a good list. Everybody has a different focus, as you will, on it. But a lot of these items are really important for the development process, right? Because we have to have teamwork, coordination. We have to have different ways to achieve the result. Of course, you know, if one way doesn't work, we better have plan B, right? Or C, which has nothing to do with A, B, or C this morning, right? Okay. And so we can debate whether things need to be uniform. Certainly you don't want to drop the ball. Focus, timing, trust, and awareness. All that, yes, it's about real life, and it's about real estate too, as well. And so I think this is a good way to kind of introduce the fact that when we're talking about the development process, hopefully it's going to, there we go, in the full thing, it will help me to help you understand what we're trying to achieve here in our course. So I'm going to go through a description again. I know you got the syllabus, but sometimes it's good to repeat a little bit about what it is that I'm looking to bring you to in this course, and then we'll get into the aspects of the development process. So, you know, we're looking at the stages of real estate development, right? What we're introducing to you, and it's very interesting listening to everybody except for Paul, and we'll get him to stand up sometime now that he's here, your 1-minute download or elevator speech, if you will, about what your interest is and what you're trying to accomplish. And of course here, we're going to teach you about the stages of real estate development, and then you're going to be plugging in all sorts of information, right? And we're going to do course materials, lectures, cases, and a few site tours too as well. Oh, by the way, there's no tour today because every project, in fact, the ones that we were going to take you to, are buttoning down for the tropical storm or hurricanes. So,
Oh, the warnings are okay. So
pardon?
nothing, there's not.
You know, it's very interesting. Let's do a 30-second sidebar. Who here has been through a hurricane? Okay. Now it's interesting. I've not been through a hurricane because of my work and travel. Every time that there was a hurricane, I just got on a plane and did my business north or wherever. And actually, I only moved back down to Florida. I've lived in Florida before last year, and this reminds me what happened yesterday and today, and maybe 2 days ago. What does that remind you of? Anybody think? By the way, okay. Anybody here from anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line? So what was going on?
I thought it was the middle of winter and we were having a blizzard.
That's right.
That's right.
Exactly. And if you actually, I've lived in Washington, D.C., 1 inch of snow and the world shuts down. And I've lived in New York and I've had 3 feet of snow in my backyard, which is fascinating. And this relates to real estate too, but I guess you can't be over-prepared. Oh, guess what? You can be. There's a lesson from today, and look, maybe we'll get the storm, maybe something will change, but an abundance of caution doesn't necessarily get you to the right place. In fact, what do we have? We find we have cancellation, disruption. What's going to happen to the Florida economy because of the announcements and everything over the next 2 or 3 days? Thank goodness it's over a weekend. There's going to be a drop in economic activity. And all those real estate projects, such as Stiles, 8th Avenue residences, which we've now rescheduled for September 12th, I mean, they took 3 days to button up the project, if you will, taking the trash down, closing up the openings. Multiply that by every other construction job that's being done here in South Florida. Real interesting what's going on. So, all right, so just a little bit of sidebar there. It's interesting. So we're going to look at all sorts of materials. We're going to go on our site tours. We're going to cover all of these different topics. And I said, don't be afraid of the numbers. And you're going to touch on it. Now, this course really is a survey course. And survey, you may not get the deep dive in everything. But my focus is such that hopefully you'll get a broad enough exposure so you'll be able to ask the questions about some of these different items. So, what are those questions? It's the fundamentals of how to analyze, develop, and operate real estate. You saw this morning, certainly with REEs, it's a great way to begin the analytical tool search, if you will, of what's going on. And hopefully we're going to give you a decision-making framework that allows you to figure out how to do things. Because data, just on its own, isn't really useful. You have to figure out how to use it. And so we're going to impart, I hope, a little bit of that knowledge and the ability to analyze some of these items. Some of you started asking the questions. Now, it's clear, too, we've got a broad range of expertise and experience here in the class. And so hopefully those of you who have that knowledge will lift up the others, and those who don't have the knowledge will ask the questions, will help raise us up to what we're trying to deal with. And then finally, on this page, I want to make sure you understand the components and chronology of the real estate process. And we're going to go through some charts and graphics or pictures and representations of that in just a few minutes. So to me, this real estate process is really about two different ways of looking at the world. There's process, and then there are the parts or the stages of the process that are key. And so I think and hope that everybody recommends project feasibility is all about the market and the numbers. Pretty basic, but once again needs to be said, and those numbers of course are important. It's really understanding how to acquire and analyze the site. And we're going to do that as our study here is you're going to find a site of some sort. We have to figure out exactly what it's going to be. We'll work through that and do an analysis of that. And that's really the first phase, because you can do all the development you want, I guess, in your mind, but if you don't have the site, you can't really build it as well. Design and construction. How many in here, I remember 2 or 3 of you have been in the construction business. Raise your hand again just to refresh my memory of who's done that. Does anybody here have an architecture or design background besides Rebecca? You do also as well? Okay, all right, so that's interesting. And then, since I'm doing the survey, who here is a real estate broker?
Agent.
All right, who's a real estate agent? All right, 1, 2, 3, oh wait, oh, that's interesting. All right, who here is a broker? Oh, okay, we've got 1. That's fine, and me too. But so you can see you've got some various skill sets, and then of course, who here runs restaurants? Oh, that must be. I'm waiting for whatever. We'll see. All right. So after design and construction, and this is all part of a continuum. I mean, these are the disciplines: marketing, developing marketing. So I want to make sure you understand the distinction between getting market information, which is really the market, and analyzing it, and figuring out how to market a property. The two are not one and the same, okay? And we'll get through that too as well, but often people confuse those things. The difference between sales and leasing, and of course, brokers and agents and others can sell and lease, and developers, builders, and managers can do the same as well. We're going to touch a little bit on financing and deal structures. So Dr. Forgy actually is going to come back after lunch and going to give you the first dive into what we'll call simple financial feasibility analysis. So that's when you get to open up the computers again. That's why he asked for those too. We're going to touch too on the fact that we have to deal with entitlements and public-private sector issues. What do you think I mean by that?
Having the right to do things.
Yes.
Zoning easements.
Yeah, that's right. All that sort of thing. Because I'm going to say it here, and I'm sure you've heard it before. You can't get anything built unless you figure out how to manage the public side of the equation. And so that's going to be critical too, as well, to get that. Anybody here have legal, law, or training? No lawyers in the classroom? Oh, good. So, and we can talk about that all we want. Has anybody here, and I thought I heard it, have some management or operating experience? Yes? Okay. And so, as property managers for property, what kind of management experience?
Corporate healthcare industry.
I see. Okay. All right. We'll get to you in a minute. That's fine. All right. So once again, these are the disciplines that are part of this process, if you will. And so, using those disciplines are going to help you focus on what I call deal-making strategies. And one thing that's interesting, it's hard to teach negotiation, but it's through the process of seeing how deals are done that you can get a feel or appreciation for that effort and aspect. As I mentioned, course materials, guest lectures, and other site visits too as well. I'm going to skip this slide because we basically talked about that. So, it's really important. We're going to talk a little bit this afternoon after we have our financial seminar, if you will, about business trends, and I have insisted that everybody get that subscription. We're going to also go back online. We're going to together open up the computers, and we'll get in a subscription to Real Capital Analytics too. We can get the academic subscription. So understanding trends and the macro market, if you will, influences what you have within the particular approach for a deal too. And what we're also going to look at is how do you figure out the highest potential? You know, everybody may or may not have heard of, you know, highest and best use. That's an appraisal term. That's not necessarily the term or the approach that one uses for development and deal making. You've got to make a distinction to it, and once again, we're going to talk about that. But we will get to the idea of how you manage investment and how that influences design, feature, and other items as well. So what's our class format? Today, our class format, because we don't have the site tour, so very heavy on content and everything, but we will start off the other classes with the current real estate events. We'll talk about that. We have a specific subject lecture. Our focus really is product type of multifamily. We're going to get to office, as you know, 2 weeks from now. We'll get to retail, we'll get to land, industrial, and the other kinds as well. I am going to ask you throughout this course, we will put you together in groups, and we'll give you the opportunity to present again and continue that, and also do an individual presentation, and that really will be part of your final study project. And then we have our site tours, and we will have class discussion, something that will continue, and every time you ask the question, that's great. I do have a class exercise too, as well, which will hopefully engage you to think about what it is that we're working on. So here's that summary. As I said, we had to shift our tours. We don't know for sure what we're going to be doing for the industrial land tour. We're pretty certain we know what's going to happen for the last tour, which is fine. So we'll get those all set up in a really good way. I am going to have, what doesn't show up here, a midterm, and guess what? 2 weeks from now is our midterm. And so we'll think about how it is and what kind of test and material. That's why it's very important that you continue to read the resources and the reading assignments that I mentioned. And of course, in the last session, we'll have a particular study project. Now, I think it's really important that we have some set of standards. And that's why I was really fascinated, I guess, by the assignments that were handed in yesterday and up to 4 a.m. this morning by some of you, which is fine. There's got to be some kind of format. You know, you're going out into the real world, and there's an expectation that you are able to not only write well, but format well too. And I think it's really important. So as far as I'm concerned, from this point forward, these are my standards. Once again, you'll see that. I'm going to put it up on Blackboard. Being concise and careful, of course, is important. You know, I don't want triple and double and quadruple spacing. You know, then I have 5 pages of text and it only has 1 page worth of content. I think that's important. I always want someone, when we're asking you for your opinion, we want you to take a position, but you've got to back it up. And how you're going to back it up is really what's going to be part of what we're going to talk about. I want you to assume that we're knowledgeable. So you don't want to talk down, you don't want to talk up, but somehow you've got to say, who's your audience, always, and figure out what you're doing with the audience. Now, look, I don't expect a market or financial analysis or any set of numbers to be self-explanatory. If you put a table up on the page, just like when we were looking today earlier at REE, everybody interprets that information differently. You need to create the narrative. And if you're going to have numbers and analyses, you've got to give me the narrative for explaining what it is. And of course, we're going to do that with qualitative and quantitative queries. So, everyone, when you do your assignment, which everybody didn't, this is the cover page is just required as part of our course. It attests to the fact that it's your own work. So this point forward, there shouldn't be any submittal that doesn't have this particular page on it. Yes?
Is that on Blackboard?
Yes, it is actually. It's the last page of the syllabus, which is up on Blackboard. But we'll make sure I'll set it up separately so you absolutely know about it. So I got lots of different, it's not content, but format. This is important. So when you're out there in the business world, you've got to have some level of standard here. And I love graphics, I love design and everything. But what I don't like are, you know, papers that don't have your name on them, for example. So I've created this template here, which I'm going to upload to Blackboard. It's pretty simple. So, you know, we're in the business, if you will. It's Nova Southeastern, it's our, Moisenga College of Business and Entrepreneurship. And so this is the format. You can adjust, you can change. You will have your footnotes, if you will. But it's really important that the subject be up there, that your name be there, that the pages are, in fact, paginated. Because I got things, and maybe it's a software problem or issue, and so I download the file. I don't know who it's from. I mean, I can figure it out, but that's really not the job that you want to have figuring those sorts of things out. And in fact, there's a filing and naming convention. So a lot of you named it whatever you named it, and so if it said, you know, ABC development, but that doesn't help me. And so there are 27 of you, if you're all showing up. So it's really pretty easy here. Your name, your last name is the first name in the document. So I'm just setting a standard here. And basically it's a framework for you to do the work in, hopefully make it easier for you as well. And name your files in the proper way. So this way we can figure out what we're doing. So, you know, we have a lot of things going on in our class, and so it's pretty simple to me. If you don't participate, if you're not really part of those presentations, you can't do well. So hopefully this compels you to realize that not only do you have to raise your hand, you have to speak up and think about those questions that you asked in class as well. As I said, there'll be a midterm, we'll have that exam, and I'll have some quizzes and class exercises that will do the way, and it will build to the major study project, which will be the culmination of your work here in this course. So, what is that major study project? In fact, within our 3-county area, you're going to locate a site. You're going to look for an opportunity. And the reason why it doesn't matter to me right now, but we're going to assign it, whether it's apartment or office or retail, is that the process by which you're going to deal with that site and identify the opportunity is really much the same. You're going to go through the development process steps. Part of what we're going to start talking to you about today, and I want you to analyze what is going on with all the different steps in the development. Now, I hope you read certainly the first page, first chapter, if you will, of the book, Piser's book. It gave you the introduction to the concepts of it, and I'm going to show it to you in a slightly different way, but ultimately get you the ability of how you can recommend a site for potential. Now, by the way, I'm not looking for a discounted cash flow analysis. If you want to provide it, I guess that's fine, or detailed numbers there. What we're looking for is your understanding of the process, and we'll get into that in greater detail in our next class as to what it is that I expect, but this just gives you a hint of some of those things to come. Any questions? Okay. Let's go to the second video. Pay attention the next minute or so, and then we'll discuss what we think you saw there. Let's see, oops, big click on the right button. Let's give it a shot again. So we just compressed about a 10-hour day into a minute and a half, and I actually sped it up a little bit because the actual video is about 5 minutes, and I don't have time to do that. All right, so just like we looked at that first video, I'd like you to tell me what did you see, what did you observe? All right, Diane.
Solid
Did you test the soils there? Like I said, some people have skills that have yet to be understood. Okay, yes.
Order.
There's an order, okay. Yes, okay, JP.
System was in place, teamwork.
Exactly.
Well, everybody's going to say teamwork, so I'll put that up here. Okay, we don't say system in this particular case. Yes, Paul?
Wood frame construction.
Okay, all right, so we're talking about actually what's going on there. See if I can spell. Okay, yes, Vice.
Coordination.
Coordination. Okay. Yes, it's a little bit different. Yes, Nick.
I saw a lot of labor.
Labor. Interesting. Okay, yes.
A process.
A process. Okay, yes, okay, go on.
Everybody has a specific task.
You sure about that?
Well,
So they simply put it the same thing.
I dicker.
Materials?
Material. What about the material?
I mean, I guess to build a barn, you need wood framing and
Right, so yes, call it supplies or whatever it is there. Okay, yes.
There is not a lot of red tape. Like if I was to do a project like that, due to OSHA, you would have like guys tied up. So safety wasn't that one of the red tapes. They could build much faster without the red tapes of permitting. I'm not expecting them.
Alright, so
From the video,
huh?
from the video, it does not look like they're practicing safety.
So regulatory
Oh,
issues.
yeah, most of them are.
Alright, but it's interesting you brought that up. We'll talk about that in just a minute. To REE, okay, Frederick.
Skill.
Pardon?
Skill.
Skill. Okay, alright, I guess that's the case there. Alright, thank you. Alright, yes, Jeff.
Execution.
Execution. Okay.
Completion?
Alright, any other
Well, not really completion, but getting
figure?
a design.
Design. Somebody had to figure that out at some point in there. Any others? You had a lot more in the other one video. No? That's it?
Good weather?
I'm sorry?
Good weather?
You know, that's very interesting. We'll talk about that in just a minute, even though we guess, not before you missed our discussion on storms and
Okay.
things like that. That was early.
I'm sure it was outstanding.
I'm sorry, what else?
Budget, they must have been on track. Because I like.
You sure about that?
Looking at the video, they did not have to take something out and put it back up.
That's interesting. Let's just pause for a minute there. And now, I didn't see a dollar sign anywhere there, but I think you're right. There probably was, if it's well done, somebody set up a budget, unless no one cares. And one thing that's really interesting about this, as we look through some of these points, is that, you know, I think it's all about numbers, but can you do a deal without knowing what the numbers are? Well, you can.
Well, you gotta
For
go
example,
south.
okay, folks, let's do this. Okay, well, we know there's at least one married couple here. How many people are married? Okay, all right. So, when you planned your wedding, did you have a budget? Who else? Who else raised their hand?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we did.
You had a budget. Okay, all right. When you go out to dinner, you know how much you're going to spend. And it's amazing. Lots of people just don't give thought to that. And of course, that's one of the things that's up front in looking at the kind of process that we're dealing with. Yes.
Oh, I was gonna add on deadline. Because it seemed like they needed the barn to be built quickly, that's why they had so many people at once.
So there's timing involved in all that. There's no question about that. My guess is the deadline here was something called nightfall. So, you know, doing it during the day made a difference, Carol.
Yeah, I was thinking JIT. I was thinking just in time, having the material you need when you need it to keep the work flowing, so you're not standing around.
Just in time inventory and all that kind of
Having
thing.
the materials you need available.
All right, but it's interesting. So it was a barn raising. Anybody want to hazard a guess who was doing it, where it was, how it was done?
Pennsylvania?
Maybe.
Okay.
What?
How it was done, I mean, an Amish community is probably quality, high quality product, and a lot of old techniques.
All right, okay, technique, that's interesting. Nobody mentioned that really before on the other video. Hold on, let me just write that down. You could spell it differently. All right, so yes, your hand is up. Average?
No, but
There you go. Technology. There was no technology in building that barn. Well, maybe there was a different kind of technology. And in fact, if we went back and looked at the video and it was a little bit slower, they were using balloon framing. Have anybody heard that term before? So basically, they set the frame up, they built it on the ground, they lifted it up. That was for the end walls, if you will. And then they framed down. So that's a form of a technological process. But I'm pretty certain no electricity was used at all there. So isn't that interesting? So when you think about what and how you get things done, technology, of course, is a huge issue. And of course, we've discovered that with our use of these research tools too as well. And so let's just look at one other thing. Okay, so solid foundation, yeah, I think that's important. It's really interesting. You have to have set this up before. And so really, the thing that I think is implied by much of this is there really was a plan. And so when we go through this development process and we look through the steps, you know, you don't really get to the building. You're really not going to put that shovel in the ground or the bulldozer unless you've got a really well thought out plan that engages all these kinds of disciplines and process through as well. So maybe this is a good entry to talk about now some of the specifics of what I see are important to the development process. Let's see if we get this here as well. And so, all right, so what is the development process? In fact, how does it differ from just simply building a building or construction? And I think as one of, I think it was, yes, you said in the manual about, gee, he understands construction, but how do you get to something before just building the building? Who's involved? What skills do you need? All this is really important. And so I'm giving you, I guess, a foundational or basic understanding of you've got to plan, you've got to look at what these items are. And in my mind's eye, for looking at any deals, actually, is really about the market first. Now you'll hear many people say, oh wait, I got a site. Oh wait, I've got a deal. And part of what you'll hear this afternoon when you do our simple financial feasibility analysis is there is the back door and the front door, and what that Dr. Forkey explained that. That really speaks to process as well. But I think it's really interesting to look at what's going on. Demographic trends, understanding how cities work. This isn't, of course, about cities and urban planning, but you've got to have some of that background. You're going to get a lot of that. In fact, in your law course, I think you can get that exposure too, really about communities. Then it's really about the people that are involved in the process. And by the way, history is good, but it doesn't repeat itself. The cycles do, maybe, but what happens within the cycle really don't. And so when we can get that information, and we're going to go on to REES a little bit later, get a little bit better, and not REES, we can work out analytics, we get a better feel for economics and trends and what's going on. I think it's also important, I'm glad in that first video that I showed you is we finally came up with, you know, weather, earthquakes, events. I mean, all sorts of external issues can change and affect real estate development. You know, if you remember from your economics courses, those external diseconomies, everybody's fresh in their economics, right? They remember all that. In fact, we'll get to a little bit of economics later on or next class as well. And so you have to make sure you take care to look at what's going on outside of the real estate deal. I mean, clearly September 11th, yes, or it's a snowstorm or a hurricane or anything like that has a true economic impact, and it makes a big deal and a big difference in what's happening. So what's going on now in our economy and in our world, if you will? All these kinds of issues have an impact. So as we discussed, and we'll have a little bit of a news discussion this afternoon, what is it that happened in the last couple of weeks that might have an impact to be alert to? If you get into the habit of looking at these trends, of reading, if you will, of sourcing this information, then you'll be able to develop a feel for what works and what doesn't in the location, the field, the place that you're in. So all these are important factors. I mean, it's just interesting. Now, you recall last year, the price of oil was how much? Very high per barrel, about $100. Then it went down to 40, then it went up to $60 a barrel, then it went down to 40. So at least, you know, regular gasoline is cheaper right now. But guess what? If we're in Chicago, the price of gasoline is closer to $4 a gallon right now. Not $2.80 something or $2.60 something. So wait, prices are down, but something else happened. A refinery in the Midwest closed down, and they couldn't get the oil and make that into gasoline. So if you're alert and aware of those things, then it's going to have an impact on your ability to look and develop. So let's now look at some pictures. I'm back into visualization. And to me, this whole idea of a development process, in fact, this is from one of my colleagues up in New York, Stephen Pecca, who put this together. We really have two different parts of what I call the development process. They're all of the disciplines and the steps of dealing with things. So site acquisition, I showed you that earlier, markets, leasing, operating, figuring out who the designers and what they can do, how you plan your budgets, how you finance the deal, how you manage the project construction and timing, how you get that community approval, which is critical. How do you document it? So that's the discipline, but then it's what you do with those disciplines throughout the phase. So I've got 4 or 5 charts here, if you will, that are the outline. Once again, it'll be up on Blackboard as to really what I call the phases of the process. And if you understand this process, then you'll have a better sense of what happens when. And we're going to be dealing with that. Every deal that we look at, there'll be an issue, as far as I'm concerned, about which part of the process probably didn't work and which did work. So I call the first part the study phase. Now, the study is really before the feasibility, because you've got to just kind of do your initial evaluation. And for each one of these particular disciplines, there's some level of study involved. So I'll give you an example. So our firm, Brookwood Equities, is doing real estate development. We're doing multifamily developments right now because it's a cycle in the market. So we have a building going up in Seattle, one that we will start construction in the middle of next year in San Francisco, and we have a couple of sites here in South Florida that we're working on. But let me talk about not the one that's under construction, not the one that's already a signed deal, but the one where we're out there in the market trying to get the deal. And so, in fact, all these items are investigated, at least in the first step, before I would even go to that particular seller or negotiate any kind of transaction. We do these kinds of efforts, so basically it's an upfront development effort, which is really important. And so evaluating the site, that's all that market information is so key that you learned about today that gives you a good handle on what's going on. And so some people bring it to an actual study. Now, for example, I'm looking at a particular property in Palm Beach County. I know the market because I've done a number of studies, so I don't have to do a particular study for that, but I have other studies which can give me the background on it. And then we do a conceptual analysis. So for that property that I'm talking about when they get up there, so I know the size of it, I figure out how many units of housing can you get on it. Pretty simple math. Go to the zoning board, go to the textbook, if you will, to that particular community, and do the math. And from there, you can get a budget. And then I actually have engaged one of the local construction companies. They gave me my cost. Once again, there's no design, there's no plan, but there's a concept. And so if you do just enough of what I call the back of the envelope, BOTE work, you can get that kind of simple analysis, which we'll talk about a little bit later, to come up with a set of numbers that says, does the deal make sense or not? In isolation, the numbers always tell you a story, but put together, they'll tell you actually a broader picture of whether the investment makes sense. I know the political climate in each of these deals. There's some properties which look fabulous, but you wouldn't go near it. Has anybody heard the term the People's Republic of Santa Monica? Anybody been to Santa Monica, California? There are lots of cities in the U.S., many, not actually too many here, but in Florida, but in the Northeast and in California, out west, that simply don't give you much room to breathe when it comes to the analysis. And frankly, it doesn't matter how great the site is if you can't get it built. And there are communities which, in fact, will change the rules on you in the middle of the game. That's why you don't see development succeeding in those particular locations. So doing all these items together gives me the ability to say, hey, does it make sense to get to the next step? Do I then actually want to make a bid? Do I negotiate with the seller or the broker who's doing the deal? And so my example up in Palm Beach County is that after I did all of that with my team, then I put in a letter of intent. I said, here's the price we'll pay. Let's see what the deal can be like. And of course, that was just the opening salvo in the process of going through this development deal. And in fact, right here, there was a decision point, if you will. And so if I could get approval on my letter of intent, great. Then I'd move forward with feasibility and see if it makes sense. Or maybe I need to go all the way to contract because maybe I can't fund that deal unless I've got a really solid piece of paper. So that study phase is the key to much of what you're doing. And so by the end of this first part of the fall semester, in fact, we're really going to have you do that study phase. We'll see how far you get into feasibility, but we set the groundwork for the whole development process here. If you do that successfully, then you can go on to the next step. So the distinction here between the study and the feasibility really is the level of detail and the depth of what's going on. So you can see that if I wrote my letter of intent, everybody knows what a letter of intent is, by the way, okay? Anybody who doesn't know what a letter of intent is, okay, fine. All right, so basically, you make an offer, and you say, here are the terms by which I'm going to offer to purchase that property. And they may or may not accept it. It's usually not binding. Non-binding is what we call it, frankly. And so it's just an expression of intent. And so I take that letter, and we get that expression of intent, and then we negotiate it. So now we're in what I'll call that feasibility phase. And I'm working with the seller of the property, and they said, you know what? We'll accept this term, we won't accept another term. And so let's make it up. So let's say I'm offering $1 million for the property, and they want 5. Well, I guess we have to negotiate, don't we? And that's the phase that we're in. But I base mine on my initial study phase and assessment. And so what will happen is that there's a lot more money, resources, time, and effort. You know, maybe it's not quite to the barn raising of the triple plays that we saw. And I wouldn't do these items until I knew that I actually had control of my property. And so, in fact, from that letter of intent, I negotiate with the seller, and we have a contract that's put together. Now, a contract is a whole legal document, and you'll get into all those sorts of things with the lawyers on staff, because I'm not the lawyer. I just tell the lawyers what to do. And you will hopefully, too, be doing that as well. But once you've got that contract where something is solid, then you go to the next stage. And that feasibility means now let's really look at the numbers, figure out what's going on, and why that's important, financial. You get that pro forma under your belt, then you have the ability to figure out how to raise the funds, whether it's debt or equity, for the deal. So a lot of you here, by the way, how many of you have their own home? You own your own home. Okay. So those of you who own, most likely you have a loan on the house, right? I mean, someone set the terms of that. You borrowed the money, and they trusted in your credit and your capability to pay. So no different than a large deal or a small deal. This can be for a little 5-unit apartment building, or it could be for many hundreds of units or many hundreds of thousands of square feet. And you have to figure out how you can fund and finance. And that really is what all these other kinds of items will get you to in the process. So let's assume that we're moving forward and that we have success in feasibility. And that not only do we have success, the contract's in place, and we've finished our due diligence. Everybody familiar with that term? Due diligence. Basically, you're spending the time, and you spend a certain number of days, and we like it, and we say, good, it's a go. We close on the deal, and we pay the seller. Now it's time to really get to the details about what goes on, what are called pre-construction. Now, there are lots of different terms here. This isn't the Holy Grail or the Bible per se. You'll find that others look at these things differently. If you're from the architecture side of the world, like Rebecca had a little exposure there, I mean, you'll be looking at your design development docs, your all the construction docs, and there's a whole process of figuring out how you get from one point to another. But from the development perspective, you're really looking at all these other items. And notice here, each part of the discipline side of the coin is involved. So you as developers, if you come to that particular point, are managing a team. And so when you looked at the barn raising or the triple play video that we had, basically there's a team in place there. And you're part of the team. I think you actually mentioned the team issue earlier when you gave your 1-minute elevator speech there about people and what's involved. So, you know, one thing that's really not up on here at all, what do you think is probably, from my perspective, I feel this way, what is the single most important asset when it comes to real estate?
The land.
Pardon? What?
The land.
Time.
Location. A lender.
Any other guesses? This is interesting. Yes, Carol, what?
The team to complete the transaction.
Closer. People. And if you can, you got it on one of those things about trust. And I've got to tell you, if you deal with the people and you know who you're working with, that does amazing things. In my business, the firm that I am a shareholder and a partner in, we have 2 other partners and myself. We met in business school over 30 years ago. We're still working together, we're still talking. That's good. And that speaks to something that's very important about how you create and develop the team and the people. And if you find really good people, then that can help you manage a lot of these sorts of issues. Because if you don't have good people, I don't care how small or how big the job is, you're going to have problems. And I know we're not teaching you about people here, but hopefully you'll get that message and how you manage that as well. So, but once again, all these different issues here, really critical. And I'm not going to go into specific now, because we get that when we do our site tours and our visits. So it was interesting, you mentioned a number of different disciplines, actually. And so when I heard that, well, it was assets. And when I said assets, many of you were thinking of a physical asset. So it's not always a physical asset, okay? So just keep that in mind as well. So what we see here, no one item is really more or less important other than the people and managing it as a team. And what really happens is you get to the development plan and you've approved it, if you will, you have your next big star and decision point, and you say, all right, how are we going to proceed in the deal? It's still pre-construction because remember, you could have a great plan, and for many buildings, we'll go to the multifamily example. Well, I'm going to build it. Do I do it as a rental building? Do I build and sell as condominiums? Makes a difference. If you're doing a retail deal, say, well, do I build it for one tenant or is it many tenants? Do I have an anchor tenant? And all that becomes part of this phase before you can improve your construction project and deal with your budgets and items within that. So hopefully, once again, we're going to see what's going on through that, and then we finally have our construction and occupancy, and it's full steam ahead for just about everybody except site acquisition. You've already bought the site. You're in place, if you will. And so even though one says, well, wait a second, in the approval documentation, it's interesting, you've got to look to the end game in how you look at all development processes. So while your eye is on the ball up front, it's got to look at the result too as well. And so, by the way, what do you think is the longest phase, if you will, in this process? I haven't gotten to the last slide yet. But so far, when you look at, let's just back up here. Study, feasibility, pre-construction, construction. What's the longest? What's the most difficult? Construction?
Pre-development.
Feasibility.
All right, but so people raise your hands so I know what's there, and tell me why you say what you said. So let's start again here.
Pre-construction because of variances and zoning and all the hearings you have to go through and permitting.
I see, okay, what do you think, Steve?
I'll elaborate on hers, I think it's site specific, but I think construction fees would be the first.
All right, that's interesting, I like that there.
I think it's study phase because it's ongoing throughout the whole project. In each phase, you're going to be studying how to handle the next
All right,
phase.
Claudia?
I would say the pre-development phase because there are a lot of variables there that you don't have control over.
Sidebar, you may never have control. So you have to understand what level of control, risk, or comfort you have in it. Who else have their hand up, Jim?
Pre-development, because you may spend majority of your time going through several projects before you find one that succeeds.
Well, that's interesting. So that's part of a more strategic, broader approach to looking at what's going on with your business. Yes, Nick?
I think it can be different for the specific project.
Well, it will be different for every project, but it's the sense of the effort and time. Why?
I think it's after the construction,
Why?
because that's when you know that while you all the effort, you're gonna get that, whether you're gonna get that investment approved by other people, that other people see that what you did is really something that.
Okay, so let's do a timeout, and it's interesting in this. So there are developers and there are developers. So the business that I like to be in is I find the deal, get the construction, we figure out all those processes, we build it, and then once I've stabilized the property, remember that Vishal was talking about a stabilized property, if I've got it leased up, or I've sold the property, I like to go away, let someone else manage the deal. But then there are developers who are in the business of not only just simply building, but owning for the long term, because they have different kind of investment, they have different kind of backers and criteria by which they're looking at for the deals. So it really depends, once again, on your focus and what your motivations are in that. Any other comments? Who hasn't said anything? Yes, Amanda. Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say is in the planning, because some projects in the planning takes about 8 to 10 years just to get up the ground. And
That's in the People's Republic of Santa Monica.
So you deal with the community, you try to find the funds to get it up the ground, you deal with getting estimates from contractors. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff that goes into planning.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And so I'm agnostic, you know what that means. I have faith, but I'm not telling you where it is, about which really is the most difficult. But I did a mixed-use development up in suburban Washington, D.C. So in 1991, actually, I was part of HSBC. We foreclosed on a piece of property that just, the deal didn't work. And so I was tasked with redeveloping the property. Tore down an old shopping center, and the goal there was to build 1.5 million square feet of space in Rockville, Maryland, which would be a new town center. So from 1991 until 1996, took me 5 years. For many people, that's not long, but you know, it's a long period of time to get the approvals, the commitments, and all those other things to take place. Finally, we started construction in 96. We opened in 97. And that was our movie theater, 100,000 square feet, retail shops and whatever. And it almost made the construction period seem like an afterthought. And in many deals today, that often is the case too.
So that was my point, that the things you cannot control, which is the public sector and everything you need from the building permitting process and variances and the people themselves, is really what trips you up in terms of timing.
That's right. So now, and the reason why I'm having this discussion, please join in, is that in fact you can control some things. So 5 years in that project in Rockville, Maryland, sounds like, oh my goodness, we weren't controlling. We controlled everything. Now, you can't let that leave the room here. But the point is that in fact, at the very beginning, when we took the property, we said, who are the right people on the team to help us? And so it's interesting. Now, this is discipline here, but not necessarily team members. And there aren't any lawyers in the room, but actually some of the lawyers are important. Carol, you have a question?
No question. There's a female developer up in San Francisco. And what
there are a few others too.
There is a particular female developer who has taken the approach of, in the pre-stage, she gets identify the stakeholders, even the individuals who are competition. She speaks with them and develop an understanding before going forward. And she is moving her projects much faster than the traditional. It's a new paradigm in how you form your team. You're actually collaborating with your competition because it's a precedent with the city for moving future projects.
It's a great point. And in fact, the 5 years in Rockville, Maryland, suburban Washington, might have taken 8 or 10 years if we hadn't done just the same thing. And so in that particular project, and it was all about clearing an old shopping center that failed. It was empty, it was full of bird poop and all of this sorts of strange things. And it was built in urban renewal. All of you are too young to know what happened in the 50s and 60s, but a lot of nice older towns, they basically closed the streets and they created pedestrian malls, they tore down the old buildings and built a shopping center that was internally focused, no street facades. So this property failed, so we took it back and we realized we had to rebuild the city. We in effect put in 5 brand new streets, 8 city blocks on however many acres in the city center of town. And to do that, we had to engage everybody. And so maybe in one of our sessions, I'll show you the photos and whatnot. There was an historic city hall and the old library. It was 100 years old. And guess what? It had a park in front of it with a stone wall that had been there for 150 years. Now, we had to break through that stone wall, and it took time, but we came up with a plan, and I did convince everybody that the stones we would put back were the same age as the stones that we take away. Not that anybody could tell how old the stones were, they're probably, a couple 100,000 years old. And so, by engaging, we had 50 different community groups. We had the unions, we had the non-unions, we had minority issues, we had all sorts of stakeholders. And so what we did, that's why we hired the right attorneys and planning consultants, is we engaged them, we embraced them, and we did a plan with them. By the way, it was the plan I always wanted. Secret, they didn't know that. All right? What do I mean by that? You're frowning, Rebecca. The point is, in a deal, you've got to figure out up ahead of time how it is that you do. And we led them to where we wanted to go by engaging them, and they helped us change some things, but we figured out before we had to do it what we had to do. So by the way, when you see community and other processes, the developers usually are pretty smart about what it is. And I want you to be smart about those things too. And if you can figure those items out, then that long process, which is long, gets shortened out. And you're right, once you get that done, you can move forward to the other phases. You have a question?
So when you started out, you expected it to take 5 years, or did it just happen?
We didn't have a time frame, but we knew it would take a long time. And so we had to have a budget of a couple $1 million to spend on the lawyers and community activists and others, and we came up with it, and we reacted, responded. In fact, let me just tell you a little anecdote. So I got an email yesterday from the attorney on the deal. I haven't been involved in this deal since 1999. And we built it, we built the mixed-use center, we did the new streets, everything in 96, 97, 98. It was successful, and then, by the way, we had a problem. It was called the economy, and we never built the office building, had to sell the property. 18 years later now, the office building is going up, the hotel is going up. I mean, it takes a long time to get these deals done. But I had an email yesterday from Larry Shulman. He was my attorney. And what was the issue? Next to the historic courthouse that we had preserved and created a park, we placed a statue next to this courthouse. It's in the state of Maryland. So what do you think Maryland was like in 1861, 2, 3, 4, and 5? It may have been on the Union side, but there were a lot of folks who felt they should be fighting for the Confederacy. Why do I mention that? Because there was a statue that the Daughters of the Confederacy had erected there in 1909 or something for the Confederate soldier. Now, we placed the statue facing south, did it adjacent to the office building, the historic courthouse, and we didn't build any paths to the statue. We just landscaped it, because we figured, that was the right place. We're not going to move it away. So, what happened after what happened actually 2 weeks ago, someone in the Black Lives Movement scrawled graffiti on the statue and said, Black Lives Matter. They do. And so the change of temperament and tone was such that this statue is no longer acceptable. And the county executive 3 days ago said, we're going to move the statue. We're not going to destroy it, not going to do it. We'll figure out where it belongs in Montgomery County because it's part of our history, and we'll teach properly to it. So it's really interesting that here's something which I thought we had, figured out what to do with and be respectful for. Came back up again, which is fascinating. And they'll come up with a solution. So Larry wrote me and said, look what's going on, Mark. See, everything we did back then, things change. Just have to look at it again. And so whatever you think is in stone isn't necessarily. But it's just a testament to the fact that you have to plan and work ahead through it. So, all right, so we're at construction. Then we get to the occupancy. Yes, in development, it's important to understand occupancy and also managing the deal. We'll talk about some of those things too as well. Some of these items tend to change and go away, of course, and there's a very different focus here on the operations and the management of the property going forward. Oh, by the way, life is one big loop or cycle. Disposal, renovation, repositioning, at some point in time, you're going to have to look at your asset and maybe start the cycle and the process all over again. So the good news is there's always work. You just have to figure out how to take advantage of that work. So that's just my initial summary. If you, I think it's time for lunch, and it's a little bit later. And is how are we doing lunch? Are they
Everything's here.
back there? Excellent. Okay, so we're going to take just 30 minutes. If you want to take a little bit less, that's fine. You need a break. You can go out in the room, but let's really do to it. My watch says 20 after, a little bit later than I thought. Let's make sure we're back here no later than 10 of 1 so we can really get ourselves started in the next one. Thank you.
Okay, what they attempted to do was to take the orders that you guys submitted and they put your initials on the order, or at least tried to explain what it was in a couple of instances. I think with salads, they apparently had ran out of salads, so they put some sort of a substitute. So just dig through the box, and these are a couple of extra drinks, and go from there. This is the initials. Okay, hot turkey. Who had a hot turkey? Let's start out. Italian.
Italian chicken.
My bias.
Okay, the Club Mex. Italian.
Is it the hot?
Okay, hot turkey. Hot turkey. Hot turkey. Hot turkey. Another one. Let's see. Another hot turkey. Another hot turkey. Another hot turkey. Another hot turkey. That was the most popular item on the. Another hot turkey or not? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, hot turkey. There's a couple of Italians. There's no salad. They were out of salads. And then the vegetable. I know that was.
Another one, does this mean, the state criteria, because the first cut was that if it doesn't, I guess. And even if you do everything.
No, I thought we were
Did anybody had a Club Mex?
Yeah, I think that was actually Paul's.
Oh.
What kind of big one-stop shop?
What's the one-stop shop?
Where you get like your ID and
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I think probably until noon.
That.
like my
What a bath is.
yeah, but what time can I take?
We go to the left here, and turn right, and it's all the way down to the right, next to it, they, things called the Horwitz building.
In there?
Trying to find one.
What was the deal with salad?
They were sold out.
I was hoping we kept windows in the world. Wasn't meant to be. Well, there's a nice atrium out there if you really need to see the sunlight. Hopefully you can find your hat.
Think so.
So what politician are you working for?
As a candidate, he's running for Congress in St. Petersburg, Florida. So it's kind of a bit of drag. So who were you? Which company did you work for? Or did the deal? The $25 million. That's a
Atlantic
pretty
Pacific,
big.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big one. So what was it?
Yeah,
Was it
through
residential?
No. Yeah, residential. It was
Multifamily.
I'm trying to remember what it's called. Basically, we pull funds from all different sectors. So like the FTA, put in like 20 million. Wait, it's like it's complicated how it works because you had Miami-Dade putting in money, FTA putting in money. So it was basically federal.
But where was the park?
It was in I'm trying to remember. It's Martin Luther King, but I'm trying to remember. It's I want to say Liberty City.
Okay. So that was probably these guys were working specifically with tax credits. What you're talking about is getting more of the HUD money, which is okay. That's why I was thinking, man, 25 million is a massive project, but now it makes more sense.
How did you find out which one is yours? Or you just picked one?
I ordered an Italian, so that's the only reason I'm looking at that one. So.
Check me out.
Somebody didn't want to pay to get in. DAC, so.
They're all done. Whatever's I guess left over.
I didn't actually know about that, but I'm also.
I didn't know if we go to the ocean. There were lots of that.
I'm definitely not.
So I guess those first nine.
When you sign up,
Yeah.
one graduate.
MSU?
Yeah.
For the young ladies.
They're still debating who's starting between the guy that just came in from,
Freshman.
no, Notre Dame. Sorry for the loss.
They don't even come up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we're just looking for. I mean, I guess I won't be able to watch most of it in class, but they're looking. They don't have the same thing, probably.
Do that.
They're just doing, they want absolutely. Yeah, every school he's gone to, awesome team. Florida, even before Florida, he was at Utah. He had an undefeated team. Even had Ohio State, they were in trouble, so they couldn't go on.
It's still something.
I didn't realize.
Oh, yeah, they have the. Guys from CSU.
What do you mean?
I can't understand that.
Yeah.
Third preseason game, started to play 3 quarters.
You think? With all the injuries, I was because there's been so many injuries in the preseason, and they don't want to do it.
No, they'll play. Next week, I won't play anybody. This week, usually the third preseason game.
Miami's pretty good. They usually have a good crowd.
Yeah, so don't. Yeah. There's a one team that has. I'm sorry.
Just when you finish.
I mean, it's with
Only, but I mean, know that the deal can be done.
the whole, that they, before they play it. Yeah, I want to check out the new one. The new stadium. I haven't even seen it. Oh, really?
And it's not. Kansas City.
But I guess I'm a little more on the run because they had a big crowd. They had a. They're using the HP's logo. Yeah, I learned on this later.
Oh, no, you
The
can't do
time
them
really hard on that from the bottom. I'd say no, because we need to be
And thank you, I love your big one.
That's true.
Take it easy.
Knowledge will take your attention. Again, there is no size consultant. These positions exactly where the
was 20 after, so. Yeah, 10 till.
Maybe a half.
Well, I have.
I'm always cold though.
You got that?
Yeah, it's kind of high outside. There's no rain yet or anything.
Nice and humid.
Work.
Over east, in terms of